Hello, my name is Deveron Johnson, and I chose to do my research paper on the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. As I began researching this topic, I was curious as to why people would be against implementing the regulations from Sarbanes-Oxley. I decided to look at the pros and cons that came from it. After the mishaps of Enron and WorldCom, it was difficult for investors to have trust in the financial reporting of companies back in the early 2000s. Thousands of people lost their jobs and investors lost their money from their investments. The U.S. government decided to take a stand. Senator Paul Sarbanes and Representative Michael Oxley sponsored a bill that passed in 2002 by the House and the Senate. They wanted to prevent failures experienced at Enron and WorldCom from happening again. The new regulations were very costly for businesses to implement. Some corporations were able to absorb the costs, whereas others found it hard to stay afloat with the added costs. I decided to take a look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of implementing Sarbanes-Oxley. Some of the greatest advantages include good faith in financial reporting, accountability for fraudulent activities, and a culture of ethics within the workplace. Good faith in financial reporting. Businesses are now required to have internal controls that would ensure the reliability in financial reports. External auditors must perform audits on large corporations in order to verify that the company's financial situation is the same as that which is reported. Accountability for fraudulent acts. The CEO and CFO are held accountable for the statements that are reported for their company. They must sign off on the financial reports stating that to the best of their knowledge, the reports accurately represent the current financial standing of the company. If fraudulent activity is found, the executives may pay a fine up to $5 million and spend up to 20 years in prison. Culture of ethics. SOX requires corporations to maintain a work environment that promotes ethical behavior. They are to ensure that employees act lawfully in ways consistent with the values and rules embodied in the code, report behavior that is inconsistent with the code, and take actions to prevent the non-compliant behavior from occurring. Some of the greatest disadvantages include the weakening of U.S. economic power, restricted growth in the businesses, and businesses choosing private markets rather than public. Weakening of economic power in the world. Donald C. Langevert, a professor of Georgetown University, stated, "It puts U.S. companies at a competitive disadvantage vis-a-vis less encumbered foreign counterparts and encourages regulatory arbitrage in the structuring of multinational businesses. Other countries have more lenient regulations make it easier for companies to establish themselves there. Expensive policies restrict growth of businesses." President George W. Bush said that SOX is the most far-reaching reform of American business practices since the time of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. When government gets involved in businesses, it makes it more difficult for them to grow. Many blame FDR's policies for the Great Depression lasting so long. William J. Carney said, "The goal should be to keep spending on fraud prevention until the returns of $1 invested in prevention are no more than $1. This is sound advice. Businesses choose private market rather than public. In a study on the impact of Section 404 of Sarbanes-Oxley, companies who earn over $5 billion in revenue pay 0.6% of revenues on SOX compliance, whereas companies with less than $100 million in revenue pay 2.55% of revenues. This makes it harder for smaller companies to bear the weight of SOX costs. Some companies choose to stay private rather than become publicly traded in order to avoid the compliance costs. In conclusion, SOX has changed the way that businesses ensure trustworthy reporting as well as increase the costs for companies to comply. There are trade-offs that come with good things. Once the cost of SOX becomes greater than the benefit, something needs to change.